Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Welcome to the Kehillah Bet Or in Guatemala. It's great to be able to say hello to our Salvadorian, Costa Rican, Nicaraguan, to all our friends. We're awaiting for some people who are coming for the Pesach dinner to share with us, and all our friends who are watching us over the internet. In this opportunity, we won't be talking about Tzaria Parasha. We're gonna be talking about something, the relationship between and the conscience that we should have from Pesach to Shavuot. In this year, we have studied, we have learned about the festivities, which is why the last 3 Mondays we've been analyzing Pesach and Hachamatzot. And by studying it, we've learned a few new things. The Torah says that we should eat matzah from the 14th of Aviv. Not from the 15th, but starting on the 14th, which this year is going to be easy because we can have matzah when we open Shabbat. What we're going to be talking now, I'm going to share a little of information, the background, so we can establish to kind of have a wider picture. We're going to actually give birth to a new tradition in Ephraim. So we're gonna review some information that we already have, so we can have a broader view. We're gonna do a little summary, which is gonna be important for those who are new in our community, so we can understand. So they can understand how we do this. In Vaikra 23rd, can you see in the screen? Okay. Can we see it in the screen? Okay, I got it. Here we have the 14th of Aviv, according to the Torah in Vaikra 23, in Shemot 12th. Pesach is the 14th. So the festivity is Pesach, and it's just one day. Hachamatzot, it's 7 days. It's from the 15th to 21st. Culturally, in Israel and among people, it's been called Pesach, the whole 8 days. But in the Torah, the 7 days is Hachamatzot, the unleavened bread feast, and Pesach is a different celebration. In the screen you can see that I've illustrated day and night of every day of each feast. We have a normal Pesach festivity and Hachamatzot, where the 15th, as you can see with the yellow box, which is the first day of the festivity, and the 7th day of Hachamatzot, which is the 21st of Aviv. According to the Torah, they're rest days. They're like Shabbats. Those days we have to get together, and the rest that we do on these days are just like Shabbats. We can buy food for those days, for example, but we actually have to rest. It's something that we have to analyze in these days. Now here in Guatemala, in Shavuot, which is going to be on the 12th, July 12th, it's going to be Elections Day here in Guatemala. And we are going to be on that rest, on that Shabbat. Last year was in May, so we were invited to We were invited to the celebration of the independence of Israel, and we didn't attend it because we were keeping that rest day. If it was any other day, we wouldn't have to worry about it. And but for any Israelite that keeps the Torah, he can't attend any other activity, any local or international activity. So Pesach, which is the 14th, there's no gathering, and there's no rest. There's no. It's not like Shabbat. On the 14th, we sacrifice the Pesach lamb, and we cook it. We prepare it, which is why we don't celebrate Pesach on the 14th. If we did, we would have to sacrifice a lamb, which we would have to pick on the 10th and sacrifice it and prepare it to eat it. That's Pesach. That's the Pesach celebration. Pesach, according to the Torah, is the name of the feast, but it's also the name of the lamb that is to be sacrificed. So on Pesach, on the 14th, we will have to sacrifice Pesach. So there's people in the different communities that accustomed to eat a portion of lamb meat. Their train of thought is that maybe when they were Christians they never thought of eating lamb, but now that they're in the Torah, they believe that they have to. They believe in their hearts that they have to have lamb in their table, in the dinner, which is on the 15th. The Pesach dinner is on the 15th in the night. But the Torah specifies that we have to eat the Pesach lamb, not just any lamb, not just lamb, but the Pesach lamb, which is why we don't eat lamb on Pesach, because then our eyes are playing tricks on us. How am I fulfilling the mitzvah? By eating lamb or through Yeshua HaMashiach and his sacrifice? So as it says, so that you don't go after your eyes and prostitute yourselves. So to be clear that the mitzvah is fulfilled through Yeshua HaMashiach and his sacrifice, there's no lamb on the 15th. So according to the Torah, the 14th we have to sacrifice and prepare the Pesach lamb, and when the sun sets, we eat it. So that dinner happens on the 15th, which means that the Hachamatzot feast begins by eating the Pesach lamb. We do not celebrate Pesach. We do not sacrifice any lamb, although we do have Pesach lamb, because His Majesty Yeshua is our Pesach, according to what Rav Shaul said. So we do have Pesach. So that's our week. That's the week we have. And in this opportunity, the 21st is gonna land on Shabbat, so we have no problem with keeping it because it's Shabbat already. We have learned in our Monday class that we do give an offering on the 15th and 21st, because it's the principle behind that the Torah shows us that we shouldn't come before the Lord with empty hands. So it's the first day and the seventh day of that week, the Chachamatzot. So let's keep on watching. I know that it could be a little confusing. So what happened in that week when it first happened? Rav Shaul says that the festivities are a shadow of something that has happened. All festivities, in some way, were instituted by something that happened. In the case of Pesach and Hamatzot, when they left Egypt. Nevertheless, one of the festivities are a rehearsal of something that's to come. So they will be fulfilled later again. So in Pesach, for example, Yeshua HaMashiach was the fulfillment of that celebration. So we don't have to continue to celebrate it because it already been fulfilled. So in the Olam Haba, we are not going to be celebrating these festivities because they already been fulfilled. So in the Olam Haba, we won't be keeping this celebration except for Sukkot because they've been fulfilled, like in the case of Pesach. According to what we have learned, what we have learned is that that week when His Majesty Yeshua was that Chachamatzot, he was sacrificed on day 14th. So he ate with his Talmidim on the 14th, so it was before the Pesach dinner. And many say that if he celebrated the Pesach dinner on the 14th, then he didn't fulfill the Torah. We have actually digged about it, that, that there were altars in the mountains, in places where there were no, the Torah forbids to make altars. So Eliyahu, who did this, was without a fault. So Hosea, who married a prostitute, and he was blameless. The woman kept on prostituting herself, and is still something that's not permitted in the Torah, but he was not found guilty. So the prophets find a level, spiritual level, from the Ein Sof, where they can, where some of the commandments found in Torah don't limit them. They don't set boundaries for them, because they can bend those rules to bring people to the Lord. That way, we can never measure that level because it's beyond our grasp. So how to celebrate the Pesach dinner a night before and be blameless? Because this is because he was going to be fulfilling that that mitzvah with his own body, with his sacrifice, changing the meaning of it. So in the New Testament, we don't see much evidence that he was doing something out of the extraordinary, out of the ordinary. So while they're having dinner, they were preparing something for the festivity. So, but they were already in the festivity, so it seems as it's something natural, but they were eating dinner on the 14th, preparing dinner for the 15th. So some rabbis say that some people used to have a dinner with their Talmidim a day before, so that the Talmidim, their students, could go have dinner with their families on the 15th. And because in those times, people will look at their rabbis as fathers. So it was a father eating with his children on the 14th, so that the children could go and celebrate it with their families on the 15th and fulfill the Torah. Nevertheless, he celebrated the festivity one day before, the Pesach dinner on the 14th. The next day, he was sacrificed, where you can see that cross. But because the Pesach lamb was sacrificed on the 14th, it is to be sacrificed on the 14th and needs to be eaten on the 15th, that kind of like binds both festivities. Am I explaining myself? So Shmini Atzeret, it's for example, like Shmini Atzeret is a festivity within the Sukkot. So Sukkot only have 7 days, but the Torah says on the eighth day. So the Torah is tying up, is binding the Sukkot, 7 days of Sukkot, with the Shmini, the eighth day. So in this way, we know that Shavuot's not instituted on a date by the Torah. It doesn't have to do with something that happened. I know that the Jewish tradition, they say that it was the Matan Torah, the delivery of the Torah. But we don't have evidence for that. And by adding that meaning to Shavuot, we're killing the actual meaning of that celebration. So Shavuot is week of offerings. Everybody will bring their first fruits, you know. So the spirit was changed because the spirit we're supposed to give and not receive. So they changed it. So now they receive instead of giving, which is not what the Torah teaches us. So he sacrificed that day. So it's written that before the Shabbaton was coming, they asked for the body to bury it. That's because it was 15th and the 16th was Shabbat. So 15th was Friday and 16th was Shabbat. So they had 2 days of rest. So they had to bury him before that. Otherwise, they would have to bury him on the 17th. So in that case, they keep rest from the 15th till the 16th. So it was 15th and 16th on Shabbat. Since they had no light, they couldn't see the grave. So on the next day, they would have come to the grave and noticed that it was empty. So it means that Thursday, Friday, and Shabbat, he was in the tomb. So Sunday morning is when they realized that the body was gone. There's people who oppose or accepting that the resurrection happened on Sunday, because for Christians that's the reason why they changed Shabbat to Sunday, because it was the resurrection day. Even though he resurrected on Sunday, the Shabbat cannot be moved. So the disciples noticed the empty grave on Sunday. That's because the Hebrew mind is different from our mind, and we wanna count the days 24 hours length, and the Hebrew mind doesn't work on 24 hours basis. So when we hear that it was 3 nights and 3 days, they wanna count 24 hours 3 times, and that's not how the Hebrew mind works. If I go to El Salvador and I say I'm gonna be there 2 days, I'm gonna leave Sunday morning. I'm gonna be all Sunday there, and then I return on Monday morning. In the Hebrew mind, that would be 2 days because I was there Sunday and Monday. But in the Greek mind, people will count and say, well, if you're leaving on Monday and Sunday morning and coming back on Monday morning, that's only 24 hours, so that's just 1 day. So if you count, it's 3 days in the Hebrew mind that he was in the grave. As I say, it's a little confusing, but that's the conclusion that we can come to. And that week is over. They finish. The Chag Hamatzot is over. So his sacrifice gives new meaning to that festivity, to the Pesach festivity. His words are very important when he's referring to the bread and to the wine. Majesty Yeshua refers to the wine and the bread. Another thing that we have found is that when the Omer count established, the offering established also, An omer is a measurement of the first fruits, the first cereal, the wheat. That it's the first crops we find in Israel. So that's how that's why they measure uh, how mature, how good the first fruit is for the sacrifice. So the state of the grain kind of like tells us when Aviv is about to begin. While in Shavuot, which is 8 weeks after that, we deliver the rest of those first fruits, the wheat, just everything else, all the other cereals that grow. So the next day after that Shabbat, you will present the count of Omer, and that's why it's called the Omer count. Judaism interpreted the word Shabbat as the first holiday of after Hachamatzot, which will be the 15th, which is why they begin their count on the 16th of Aviv, which is why the Jewish celebration of Hachamatzot, of Shavuot, lands a week before ours. But we're taking it literally as they did back then. Shabbat is Shabbat. There's no portion in the Torah where the word Shabbat is used to name any other holiday. There's Shabbat, Shabbaton, and Yom Teruah is also called Shabbaton, but there's no other holiday or feast that's called Shabbat. Okay. What I'm saying is that we don't have any base on the scriptures to say that Shabbat is the name of any other yearly celebration. So Shabbat is just the weekly rest. So the way we interpret this is that knowing that the Shabbat they're talking about is the Shabbat within this Hachamatzot celebration. If we have 7 days of celebration, Hachamatzot, one of those days is Shabbat. So it is. Sometimes it can be in the end, it can be at the beginning, but there's a Shabbat within this celebration. And sometimes we've had Shabbat at the beginning. So, because the date can vary, but Shabbat is always Shabbat. So, by presenting the Omer offering, that Shabbat, that day after the Shabbat of Hachamatzot, and we count, then that means that the offering after the 50 days is going to land on a different day, which is why the Torah doesn't give us a specific day, a date for that celebration, because it changes depending on which day of the week the Shabbat that initiated the count was. Then that's going to change the date when it lands. So we begin that count on that day after Shabbat. So if we do the count, it's always going to be Sunday because it's 50 days. We do know that, but the Torah does not ask us to count 49 days. The Torah says to count Sheva Shabbats, Sheva Shabbaton, which is 7 Shabbats. Sheva, which is 7, and Shabbatot, which is Shabbats. So 7 Shabbats. So we can see in the book of Exodus, where we see the unlimited bread celebration, they walked to Philippos, and we were gathered together on the first day of the week. Some other people say that on Sunday, but on the Greek, it actually says on the first of the Shabbat. Wow, what does that mean? That the disciples of His Majesty Yeshua didn't count 49 days. They counted 7 Shabbats, and they gather on the first Shabbat of the count of the Omer. So us as disciples of His Majesty Yeshua don't have to count 49 days because the Torah doesn't say so, nor His Majesty Yeshua says so. We count 7 Shavuot. So here we have Pesach, which is the 14th. Then we have Hachamatzot, which is 7 days. We have a Shabbat on the 1st, on the 15th, and on the 21st. The Omer count, which initiates the count, ties the Shavuot with Hachamatzot. And Hachamatzot is binded to Pesach through the dinner. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. So Shavuot is connected to Hachamatzot and Hachamatzot to Pesach. So what the Torah says is that after the 7th Shabbat, the next day we're going to count day number 50, which is Shavuot. That's the Shemitah, a cycle of 7 years, which every 7th represents the Sabbatic year, a year where people will lay rest to the earth. And after that 7th year, that Shabbat year, the next year was the Yovel, Jubilee. That change, the Torah establishes it in the 7th month, because it says that the 7th Sabbatic year ends in Yom Teruah. So we have Yom Kippur, and then in that year the Yovel laws didn't count. So after Yom Kippur, they initiated with the laws of the year of Yovel. That's what the Torah says, that on that 7th cycle Shabbatic year. So those are the blessings for every Shabbat. I believe that on year 2013, through a teaching of another rabbi, through Kabbalah, we understood that the Omer count, if you notice, Hachamatzot is in blue and Shavuot also in blue, because it looks as if we had a meeting with the Eternal on Hachamatzot, and then we split apart, and then we met again on Shavuot, which is why some rabbis in Kabbalah, they see that Omer count as the time of the Nidah, where the husband and wife should be separated. Those of us who sleep in different beds during the time of Nidah, we cannot lie that we keep count of those days till we lay with our wives again and sleep on the same bed. So we enter Hachamatzot and we begin to prepare ourselves, and in that desire to meet again, and that's going to happen on Shavuot. We're separated on the Omer count, but we're eager for it. So we enter that state of preparation to meet again in Shavuot. The Gematria says that the number 5 as the Olam Haba, number 50 or number 5, the Olam Haba, which is why the year of the Yovel is they have to do with the world to come, the Olam Haba. So everything goes back to its owner, to the original owner. So that's so we have a preparation, a a sacrifice, Pesach, which we eat on Pesach, which is related to Hachamatzot, and then the count of the Omer finishes with Shavuot. So that teaches us that we can conclude with through this that if A is related to B, then B is related to C. So Pesach, this sacrifice of the Pesach lamb, is highly connected to Shavuot, which is a sign of the Olam Haba, symbol of the Olam Haba. There's no Pesach sacrifice, then I cannot celebrate Hachamatzot, then I cannot celebrate Shavuot. It's like if it were a big celebration of 8 weeks. The Pesach plus Hachamatzot plus Shavuot, so that's 8 weeks. Is there any question regarding all this information? No? As we know, the Hebrew calendar is based on agriculture. So, on the next day after Hachamatzot, we find the first fruit of the first cereal that from Israel. Okay. In Shavuot, we present our offering of the rest of the cereals. Are we following? So, Hachamatzot on that first day is the first fruits. Then on Shavuot, we present the rest of the celebration. So that day that they noticed that His Majesty Yeshua had risen, they were presenting the first fruits, the first fruits of the cereals in Israel, being His Majesty Yeshua, that first fruit of resurrection. So it's highly connected, and that Pesach lamb is connected to Shavuot because the tradition establishes that to be able to go through to Shavuot, the death must rise before. Remember when His Majesty Yeshua is going to resurrect Lazarus? They say, yeah, we know that they're quoting. They say like, oh yeah, we know that he's going to resurrect again in the later days. They say like, no, because people know that because people believe that the Hebrew mind teaches that our death here gives birth to the world, to life in the next world. Abraham was promised. To Abraham was promised, to you and to your descendants I will give this promise. So that means that Abraham is going to be alive among his disciples. That's the in the Hebrew mind, that's the base of the principle of resurrection, Abraham's promise. So if His Majesty Yeshua resurrects as the first fruits of the resurrection, then we would have to we are the rest of the cereals on Shavuot. The first fruits are Israel, and the rest of the fruits are those who are not Israel. Are you following there? So, in a way, those who don't eat of that Pesach lamb cannot celebrate the Pesach lamb, cannot celebrate Hachamatzot, because they have not been freed by the Pesach lamb. In some way, they won't be able to spiritually grow, so that they can be counted in those who resurrect. That's why there's a relationship between the Pesach lamb and Shavuot, because if they don't eat, they are not free, then they're not worthy, and then they won't resurrect. So please don't feel bad that I always remind you where we come from. We always need to keep that in mind. I always remind myself where I come from. We come from a place where everything is free. Remember? So I raised my hand, I accepted the Lord, and since I did that, me and my house have gained salvation. So we can relax now. So it's I've been teaching for a few weeks now that that's a constant, uh, something you have to do constant. Something that your guard should not drop down. You should keep on working on it. Something continuous. So when we get together with the youth on Thursday, I was talking with them and I was asking them, how do you get nervous when you're gonna have a test in school? Do you have any doubts in your mind? Do you have any, that emotion that you feel? And when that finishes, how do you feel? Ah, relaxed. So, and that's exactly the vision of King Shlomo, who says that it's the same. Those who that the day they were born and the day we die, we should have that same emotion. We should be nervous. We should, because it's the day we begin the test. But those who die or have died, and they're resting. They're no longer stressed. So while you're on the test, you're nervous and you're excited. Trying to copy. Maybe cheat a little bit. No, 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 no. Okay, but maybe one of them gets up and one of the other classmates, he finishes, so he gets up and he delivers his test. What do you think? It's like, oh, how lucky he is, and I was telling them, why don't we do the same thing now when somebody dies? Like, oh, lucky him, he just delivered his test, now he's resting while we continue on the test. So on a funeral, some friends were asking me. I believe that they were trying to say something beyond the words, but it was one of those classmates who were good, who were well behaved. He was an example, and well, they said Javier. Well, they didn't say Javier. They called me Shorty. That was my nickname. But so they were they were saying like why isn't it you? They were all surprised, like saying like the one was supposed to die was you. So that's those are my friends, my childhood friends. But okay, so I said I understand your eyes, but who told you that dying is bad? So because the ones that remain in this life are the ones that are suffering. So in a way, we have to understand that everything we do here in this life is to prepare ourselves for that test, so that when we get our grades, we can win the test, we can pass that grade and enter the Olam Haba. So it's not about me doing Tevilah. It's not about accepting His Majesty Yeshua. It's not about keeping the Torah. It's about keeping a constant pace, a constant growth, so that when we enter the test, time's up, then we can rest assured because we have answered correctly. Just as Rav Shaul said, I have fought the good fight, I have kept the faith. And, we shouldn't meet that deadline with doubt. So that's a constant thing, it's a constant work. We cannot lower our guard. So what happens with people that, they don't read the parasha every week because they're like, oh, every 5 years I've been reading the same parasha. They don't even ask anymore because they're relaxed. They don't struggle. They don't push. They don't push it. So keep in mind that everything is a test. Everything that the Lord let us live is allows us to live is a test. So, understanding a little deeper the count of the Omer, which has to be a preparation, a gradual preparation, so that we can reach the Olam Haba, understand that love is the only spiritual law. I'm sorry. It's the only law that manifests in the spiritual law. So, love manifests itself in creation through justice. Creation is an act of love. Love did not only give birth to creation, but kept everything clean and kept everything connected to its creator. That love is manifested in the physical world through justice. People only talk about justice, but when we talk about justice, we picture something unbreakable. It's about to crush us. But the Torah is a Torah of love, which was given for our own good. We cannot unbind love from justice when the base of justice is love, which is why in the first chapter of Bereshit we can only find the name Elohim, which is a justice attribute. The cause of the justice in creation is love. The manifestation is love. When people understand this and they want to apply justice to their children, why did you do this? Then, people don't feel love. They perceive justice unbinded from love. When you set rules in your house, don't think of yourself and your selfishness, but what you should do is think of what's best for your children. So those rules which you will set will be generated by love. That's what God does. So by applying justice, we should be applying love, because we shouldn't hate. We shouldn't forget that love is binded to justice. So if love is just and righteous, then which is why in some way the blessings that we do on the Omer count are based on Psalms 119, based on love and justice. If you say that, you say like, wow, who can keep the law? But they're also accompanied by some verses from Song of Songs of two lovers, because people in their minds separate love from justice. Okay, which is why when we apply justice to our children, the heart sets aside and they follow the rules, but they don't love you anymore. So, oh son, it's been a while since you last told me what happens in your life. Like, yeah, because we are applying justice without love. Am I explaining myself? So I have a psalm here that I want to show you. Psalm 119, 1 through 8, which is the first part. Psalm 119, 1 through 8. We have blessing of the first day of the Omer. It says, how blessed are those of blameless conduct. When somebody says that, it's like, wow. Those who walk in the law of Yahweh, how blessed are those who keep his testimonies and with all their heart seek him. Truly they do not do iniquity, because they walk in their ways, his ways. But that blessing is accompanied by songs 1 to 7, which says, oh, if he kissed me with kisses from his mouth, because your curse because pears are better than wine. Your ointments have a pleasant fragrance. Your name is like ointment spilled. That's why the maidens love you. Catch me, and we will run after you. The king introduced me to his bedroom. We will rejoice and rejoice in you, and we will find your love more fragrant than wine. With righteous cause, they love you. Can you see this? The obedience of the Torah, the righteous way, is a way of love. We cannot unbind them from justice. Which is why now we're gonna give a deeper meaning to the count of Omer, because if it's true that we study the Torah and the mitzvot, we cannot unbind the Torah, from love, because that's what generated everything. Love towards us. So, Shavuot, as we understand, is the only celebration whose name has nothing to do with that day. It has to do with what happened in Chachamatzot and Pesach. So we, through the count of the Omer, we have to do it with that spirit generated in the Pesach dinner, which should be growing and a progressive growth, so that we can conclude on Shavuot, which is something we haven't done so far. Shavuot has to do with the days, with the celebration, with the previous celebrations. Shavuot means weeks. So that's because of the weeks that went by before that celebration. That means that the success of Shavuot depends solely on what happened on those weeks. As if our entrance to the Olam Haba is related to our work, while the eternal works in our souls in those weeks constantly. So, if while we're in this life, we should be growing while we're in this life in a constant manner. We cannot lower our guard, because we have learned that energy is not static, it moves. A day that I don't grow is a day that I would grow. So if I'm not moving forward, I'm moving backward, but I cannot be static. So that week represents, those weeks represent our life. A week where we should be growing and growing and growing and growing till the deadline of the test is finished, and we can all say we finished. And we should all be saying, I finished and I didn't copy, I didn't cheat. So, how do you feel when you finish the test? It doesn't matter if you had a few wrongs, you already finished. And that's what people feel when they live this life. That teaches us that this Shavuot celebration, which has to do with the Olam Haba at 50, has to do with the previous work, a progressive work that began before. So we should awaken our conscience in entering the count of Omer in a way that will help us fulfill that spirit. And Rav Shaul said in his letter to the Hebrews, in Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, even the Hebrews said, wherefore we also, having around us a great cloud of witnesses, shedding of all weight, shedding us of all weight and of all the sin that beset us, that's casting away sin. Let us run with patience that race that is set before us. So if we've been called to do some work, not to rest. So it says, looking looking at Yeshua, the author and finisher of the emunah, who by what's emunah? Connection. Who by the joy set before him endured the cross, and despising the reproach, has sat down at the right hand of the throne of Elohim. So we know what we should be aiming for. We should be aiming to be like Yeshua, to love God just as His Majesty Yeshua did, to fulfill every mitzvah just as He did. He's a role model. I do not say anything but what my father told me to say. I do not do anything but what my father told me to do. That's what we should be aiming for. So the Omer count. So now, for the Omer count, we have an objective. What we should be aiming for. We should be aiming to be and be one with Him. In Ephesians 4:12 and 13, Rav Shaul says, in order to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. In the previous verse, he was talking about the teachers, prophets, and everything. So, to equip the saints, why should be he equipping anybody if they already made their prayer, accepted, Lord, so they're saved? No, that's not right. So, to equip them for the work of their ministry, for the edification of the body of the Messiah. Until, when do we finish that? Until we all reach the unity of the Emunah and the full knowledge. Knowledge is fusion. Knowledge is fusion of the Son of Elohim. A perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of the Messiah. Which is why our prayers, I believe that in Yom Kippur they say, in our Sidur, we would ask Yeshua, we want to love the Eternal as you do. We want to serve Him as you love Him. We want to be just like you. Because our objective is to be everything He is, to be at His stature. And that will happen in the Olam Haba. While we're not there, there's still work that we need to do. It's constant work. And in the verse 14 it says, so that we're no longer fluctuating children. So that means that today I want to, tomorrow I don't. I want to go to Shabbat, to the Kehillah today, not tomorrow. Not fluctuating. Buffeted by the waves, carried away by every wind of doctrine, by the cunning of men. It's like some people say, like, there are so many doctrines, I don't even know what to think anymore. So buffeted by the waves, carried away by every doctrine, by the cunning of men who masterfully employ the tricks of error. But if we do the truth in love, if we do the truth in love, let us grow in all things in Him who is the head, the Messiah. That's our objective. That every time the Mashiach is revealed in me, as Rav Shaul said, imitate me as I imitate Him. Just as His Majesty Yeshua said, if you have seen me, then you have seen the Father. Can we say that when our children ask us, Dad, how does the Mashiach behave? Are we able to say, as I do? So that should be our objective, for them to see Mashiach in our lives. I remember a picture of Mordechai. I believe I was helping him there. We accept His Majesty Yeshua, but the question we ask ourselves is if we actually knew what was the objective of all of this. We just had that necessity, that need, that craving for that change in our lives, which is why we accepted His Majesty Yeshua in our lives, a plan of salvation, which was the only we could have, we had, the plan that was presented to us by His Majesty Yeshua, by God through His Majesty Yeshua, and we accepted. We have accepted, and I have accepted His Majesty as about 5 times because I say like I need to keep on growing. So I go and do Tevilah and I accept Him again, and I see something else, something deeper, and then I've done that about 5 times. But my conscious level has grown, so every time I do it, it's with a deeper meaning. It's like somebody we cannot. It's like somebody who's been out of a job for many months, and then something comes up, and he's just like, "Yeah, sure," because he's got a great need for work, so he doesn't care. So that's how we approached it. We just approached because we had that necessity of changing something in our lives. The problem, not the problem, but what has been in my heart for a few weeks now, is that in the Pesach dinner, we do a kiddush which I call kiddush hashva, because we make the spirit of the Mashiach come down and bring consciousness to us. We drink of His Spirit. I'm not talking about a blind slave by his necessity of freedom. We're talking about a person who's free and acknowledging and with previous preparation has come to the table. And he's about to drink a wine where the Ruach of Yuveh dwells. Which is why Rav Shaul says, those who are hungry, eat at your house. Don't come to this table and eat, because they will carry evil for their lives. So, with that Tevilah, which we are aware when we do that Tevilah, it's a complete. We give ourselves truly and completely. So that's what we've been doing, studying, fulfilling, going deeper to approach that table with a deeper conscious. And when we come to that table, which is a literal word, Rav Shaul says that many are asleep. So that means that our conscious level, the awareness that we have of what's happening, will determine the effect of that lamb in our lives. So the emphasis lies on the kiddush, conjuring with his blood, now with more conscience, sovereignty, with a clear objective, measuring the consequences of what we're doing. It's like one thing is to be attracted because of the love that we have, and something else to be attractive is to be attracted by nothing and just ask somebody to marry us. So through love, we ask the person to, when we ask somebody with love to come and share their lives and share every day of their lives with us, then that's conscious. That's being aware of the reality. and that's the Pesach dinner. So we cannot lower our guard at any point in the count of the Omer. Every time that we count a Shabbat, we should let our conscious level rise, to grow, thanks to that Pesach lamb, and reassure that compromise which God laid on our heart through that seed in Pesach. And every week, every Shabbat, we should grow. His Majesty Yeshua left, but he promised to return, and we will see him again, those of us who are prepared for his return. Which is the most important thing about this is seven, the number seven. 7 times 7 is 49. So we have 7 weeks of Hachamatzot. The Nida is 7 days. So we have to keep digging, because we have to keep on pushing, just as Rav Shaul said, keeping our eyes on His Majesty Yeshua. We won't rest until we reach the measure of that perfect man, having no Yetzer Hara. That's our objective, and we won't stop until our soul has any ability, until his soul has the ability of manifesting itself through us. Then we will rest. We will modify the blessings. They're practically the same, but due to the order we've seen, we're going to put love first. We're gonna put the verses of Song of Songs first, and then Psalms, which is the justice manifested in this world. So the verses of Psalm 119, but not just that. We're going to do a kiddush in every count of the Omer. We've done so as we've done in other opportunities. This is very important. For some, this is just rituals, and for others, we're very light. So I don't care what anybody says. We do what we have to do for our spiritual growth, and we do so not to be distracted from the objective. But we don't stop doing things to get lost. So this sidurs and its teaching method with the objective of developing principles and values in our lives and the lives of our children. What will happen? What happens if I put candy in the Aron Kodesh so that kids can come and get an Aron Kodesh? They can approach the Aron Kodesh to get candy, because candies are sweet, and His Torah is sweeter than honey. So that's gonna teach our children that they can approach the Torah. The Aron Kodesh is where we keep the Torah. So they're gonna learn that they can approach it with love, because it's sweet. So through our deeds, because everything we do has a symbol. So because sometimes people think that what we do, it's a ritual, and people say like, oh no, now they're all religious people. No, that's just because we're respectful. And we do all these things because we do all these things so that our children, through those rituals, can learn. So through our symbolic, evocative, because it's evoking something spiritual, and metaphoric, It's trying to teach. Also through the prophet. So in a way, we have to have the whole lamb in our lives, all our lives, every day, till we reach the Olam Haba, in a crescent count, which will be represented in the count of the Omer. So every time that we do a kiddush, every time that we do the blessing here, we're gonna do a kiddush to bring consciousness to our lives. The allegory that's not the word, right? No, another word. Yeah, because let me think here. So every time that we're gonna drink a kiddush, we're gonna do it with consciousness, awareness, and that awareness has to be growing until we reach the Olam Haba, and that's what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be presenting every time, every Shabbat. We're all gonna bring our wine and our glasses, and we're gonna do what it says about the lamb. If the family is a small family, it's a small lamb. So if if the wine bottle is big for your family, then you can share with others. So you can bring some glasses, you can bring everything. So with your family or as many families who are gonna join together, or if you're single, you can join another family, and you're gonna share. So just like they did with the lamb. If the lamb is big, share with others, and if your family is small, then bring a smaller lamb. No. So why are we doing this? 5 things. Why are we doing this? Why should we do this in the count of the Omer? To keep in our conscious level that through the Mashiach, Yahweh gave us life and freedom. And we should never forget this. Because the day we forget this, the day gratitude leaves our hearts, arrogance and pride will enter our hearts. It's something that we have to remember for the rest of our lives. Whatever we have accomplished is thanks to the blood that was shed on that wood. Secondly, with the growth of the Mashiach in us, we advance in our way to the Olam Haba. That's something that's constant. It's something constant that should reflect the Messiah in my life. Okay? That's what we should be doing. 3, we confirm our commitment acquired in the Passover dinner, in the Pesach dinner, to make us echad with the Mashiach. What I said, I say it again, until the Eternal says time's up. I'm gonna continue to grow, because that's what happens to some people. They come to the Torah. The Torah is such a burden that they forget who brought them here. They suffer of amnesia, like that man who was who borrowed some money but then forgot to pay back. 4, we proclaim justice as a manifestation of love. Because if we can keep the Torah today, it's thanks to that love which the Eternal gave us or shared with us. We should never forget that. Love and justice are one. So whenever you want to apply justice, remember love. Okay? And 5, we sanctify which is a translation of the word kiddush, our lives to the messianic commitment, because we were called to do what he did, to do as he does. Just as the Shemesh of the Hanukkah is gone, but who are the ones that remain lighting up the world? Is us. We should continue in our work in the messianic calling to share him, to manifest him in everything we do, constantly, constantly, constantly. So we're gonna every Shabbat we're gonna be doing the kiddush of the kiddush count of the Omer, which is gonna be tied with the kiddush that's gonna be tied to the Pesach dinner. Aware, calculated. We're gonna prepare for it. We're gonna think about it first, so it's not an accident. We're gonna be prepared. We're gonna give our offering for the Pesach dinner. We're to drink of that wine. We're going to eat of that bread, drink of that wine. We prepare with our best clothes. So with that awareness, we're gonna do the count of the Omer every Shabbat, and we're gonna keep that awareness not just every time they count the Omer, but every day, because this is constant, day after day. It's a test after test, so that we may never forget who brought us here and why he brought us here. When we accepted His Majesty Yeshua, the Torah, our first Tevilah, there's when we begin our work. If not, you can imagine the Israelis leaving Mitzrayim, and those nations who left with them, the desert was filled. No. Wait a moment. They left Mitzrayim and entered freedom, but no. There's an order. There's a protocol. We have to follow something. And there's a promised land we have to reach all together. And that's a constant through the desert of the nations where we are. Is there any question? Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask you, because we thank you because your love has remained with us, manifested in our lives through His Majesty Yeshua. Thank you, Lord. And we ask that you forgive us for our lack of awareness and consciousness. Prepare us, work in us, so that we may eat of that Pesach dinner which you provided for us. Aware of the importance of drinking of that blood and eating of that flesh, so that we may fulfill the objective which you have set for us before the beginning of time, and that we may never lay down our guard in our quest to become like Him. Baruch haba kadosh. Amen.
En Jerusalén celebraremos todo Israel, que todo el mundo escuche nuestra voz. No estamos muertos y cantamos hoy Efraín, Efraín, Efraín. estamos listos para recibir al rey. La tribu de Judá y la tribu de Efraín, un solo pueblo, un solo Elohim. El mundo entero al fin despertará, verán la luz desde Jerusalén. Efraín, 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 en la música. Efraín,